Are you looking to take your personal finances to the next level? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not, with your host, Joseph Sangle.
Well, welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by Fully Funded Life. My name is Joe Sangle, and we're fired up every single week to bring you right now relevant financial help so that you, yes, you, can live a fully funded life. Today's episode is episode number 207. That's 207. It is June 20th of 2022. We're still without my regular co-host, Megan Hibbard. And in her place today, we have a very special guest, and that is my womb mate, my identical twin brother, who was allegedly born 7 minutes before me, Dr. John Sangle. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. It's my pleasure to be on this podcast. Megan, hoping everything's going great for you. I'm going to hold down the right seat for you here while you're gone.
That's awesome. Way to go. It is interesting. John watches pretty much every episode. I think you watch them, right? You don't listen to them. You watch them on YouTube, baby, and give feedback and everything. Was one of the first ones to detect that Megan may be with child because she was eating a snack in the middle of an episode. And you're like, I don't know if I've ever seen that before. And I was like, she had to do that because morning sickness was happening. And you're like, maybe she should tell some people why she is just having snack attacks. Yeah. I like it. That's awesome. So it's that doctor, it's that King Doctor sense.
That's right. That's right.
So we're really excited to have John on the podcast. We're going to talk about real estate investing. And I know this is a podcast episode that a lot of people are interested in. Many people are very intimidated by it, but yet they're still interested. And so we're going to talk about it, fired up about that. But before we dive into all that, we're going to have a success story. Do you want to read the success story? It's right here.
Yes. Today's success story comes from Sharon, who's feeling encouraged in her financial journey. She's been able to save money in her first month of budgeting and is even rapidly paying off debt. She said, I just wanted to thank you for your words of encouragement. During the last month, we were able to save $500. What a great way to start. We've also paid off 2 credit cards. We only have 2 more to go, then no more credit cards. What has really helped us is the use of envelopes. Thanks again.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
And, you know, one of the tips that we say, it's one of the foundational elements, is using cash envelopes. And it helps you stick to your budget, make sure you don't overspend. You and I have been running around. We're recording this in mid-April, I guess, because you're down here visiting for spring break, and we've been out chasing Tom Turkey, and he's been a fox. He's been out foxing us. But I've been paying for some meals with cash. You've witnessed it. I bought some hot dogs today with some cash.
That's right.
Because we use cash envelopes still to this day. Jenny and I do. So it's really good. That's awesome, Sharon. I also would say this. You've been able to save some money, which means you have your priorities correct. You're doing rung number 2 of the ladder, which is building that 1 month's worth of expenses. That helps you debt-proof your future life. Paying off some credit cards, well, that makes you feel like you're really winning. Way to go. Our podcast is powered by your success. And so we're fired up that you shared that. Thank you so much. Awesome. So let's dive into the topic of the day. Again, to remind everybody what we're talking about today is we're talking to my twin brother, Dr. John Sangle, about how he got started with real estate investing and what he has learned along the way. And so let's start by backing up a little bit. We grew up just south of Indianapolis, Indiana. We were always basically in the same class because we went to a school in a cornfield. You remember that?
I do that.
I'm going to do that Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney, Chris Farley thing.
Yeah.
You remember that? That was awesome. But then we took just a sharp turn in our life. Even though we're the youngest of 6, we're the first to go straight to college out of high school. Why did you want to go to college? Was it to avoid working, or is it because Mr. Larry Ferris, our guidance counselor, kept telling us we should go to college?
I felt like going to college was kind of a way to get out of what we were doing, which was we had 2 jobs at home, which was working on the farm and building homes, and both of them were weather dependent. And, if it rained, you were happy with the crops as long as you had the crops in. If it was raining and you didn't have them in, it wasn't good. If you had the house under roof, you were happy. You didn't mind the rain. But if it was freezing cold and you had to go out after dinner to hold a furnace against the brick wall so it would set up enough so you could join at 11 p.m.
Get fired up.
I wanted the job that was kind of indoors. Even though I love the outdoors, I wanted it to be on my terms, not my full-time job.
So the sharp diversion happened when I went to Purdue University, the Boilermakers, and you went to the arch rival, the Indiana University Hoosiers.
Yes, we talked about this earlier off the air here, but you were raised right. You were raised an Indiana University Hoosier fan.
Yep.
And despite being brought up in the way a child should go, you went to Purdue, and I stayed true and went to IU, and anyway, that's what made me want to go there.
Yep, and you know what Purdue people say to IU grads? Hello, doctor.
No, they say IU grads. Supposedly, the joke is say, "Hi, welcome to wherever. May
McDonald's.
I take your order?"
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
It's funny things that colleges have against each other. I love it. They have the same thing with Clemson and South Carolina here. Purdue is a land grant college, just like Clemson is, and South Carolina. IU, they're both very good teams, sports and all that stuff. But here's what I just wanted to share is you went to school and your undergrad, you studied what?
I was a nurse. I did undergrad in nursing, got a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. I also joined ROTC to help pay for that loan. Or that debt there, and I had them pay for the wrong loan. I always joke about that because they paid for the undergrad, which was about $12, and got me for 4 years, and it was great. I had a great time. Spent time jumping out of airplanes, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Spent some time at Fort Lewis, Washington, and a year in Korea. Got out, and by that time I had been roommates with a doc and wanted to go to medical school, and had finished up some prereqs while I was in North Carolina, and moved on to that step.
And so you then went and you studied emergency medicine, Drexel University, the Drexel Dragons, I think it is. Is that right?
They are the Dragons.
Yes.
I did medical school, graduated from that. My chosen specialty was emergency medicine. I went to Pitt, University of Pittsburgh for that, and then have been working now for about 12 years on my own practice in emergency medicine.
So that's awesome, man. It's been amazing to watch that journey. But somewhere along the way, you made a decision to get into rental real estate, which is our topic today. And so kind of help everyone understand, because there's a lot of people who are interested in this. What caused you to say, hey, I think I want to get into that? Was there a moment? Was it, what caused you to say, I want to get into rental real estate?
Well, we were raised son of a homeowner or a home builder, and he had rentals. Our dad did.
Accidental rentals.
Well, he wanted to build them. He didn't have a house to build custom for someone. He built it. It ended up being a rental because no one would buy it. And so he ended up having quite a few rentals, and it worked out really well for him.
Let's pause and say, because I think this is relevant to current financial climate, he didn't have people having him build homes because interest rates were 15 to 17% interest. And so he decided to build a couple of homes in the country, some beautiful 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses, 40 foot by 30 foot. And for the same reason no one was having build houses is the same reason he could not sell them. So he had this idea that says, well, maybe I could rent them. And so he kind of stumbled into rentals. Mm-hmm. So you observed that happening. It worked out well for him over time.
And of course, we didn't know anything that was going on in the finances of our house, but he was doing rentals. And I decided I was very interested in that. And I had looked into it, and I found a book that I was very interested in. It was called Building Wealth, One House at a Time by John Schaum. And
is that the same person with the piano music? John W.
Schaum?
John W. Schaum.
Anyway, we'll post a link at the bottom of this episode.
That's awesome.
But anyway, that book talked about buying single-family rentals and how to run it as a business and keep the same hours as your banker does. And he talked all the way through it, through how to raise your tenants right. And it was kind of written kind of funny. And the guy was a pilot, and I was interested in flight, even though I've never done it. But, if you ever follow Joe here, he posts every plane he ever gets on. So we always are been interested with flight, but we've never attempted to become a pilot. And so I was very interested in stepping into rentals as a way to offset what was going to be a fair-sized W-2 income. And, I had heard about all of the tax advantage pieces, and also that the tenant helps you pay off the debt. And at the same time, you're providing an incredible service to people. When Mary and I, my wife, were in residency, in medical school, trying to rent a place with cats was brutal. First of all, 1 cat was no good. 2 was not good. And if you mention 3, the people's head pops off their head. And then you start pleading for forgiveness from God for potentially miscounting your cats when you name them. And so we decided that we were going to be pet-friendly landlords. We could provide an awesome service to people, and that if we ever got in the position that we could have rentals, our service commitment would be we'd give priority to people that have pets, and be able to, at the same time gain in net worth with rentals. So that's how we did it. I read that book while I was in residency, and anyway, we'll move on.
And that book was Building Wealth One House at a Time. That's a book I've never read before. I've never heard you mention that book, I don't think.
I read it thoroughly when I was on a Hawaii rotation.
You were on rotation as part of residency in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. So you're married at this time. You have a couple kids. Couple sons at the time, and you're getting ready to finally, hopefully, if you pass the boards, get to make some real income. Because one thing was guaranteed, you have a whole lot of student loan debt, right, from medical school.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
But you're not guaranteed to pass the boards. You had to work hard for that. But you're getting ready to have some income. And what made you say, I would rather focus on some real estate rather than take every single dollar towards student loan debt? Why would you do that?
Every dollar did go to every high-interest student loan. We paid off we were in a really rare part, and I feel bad for students today that are taking loans. Their student loan interest rates are much higher. They're 6-something. If you have a great rate, I was in this very brief window, and I was able to put almost all of my loans at 2.25%. And so I had
fixed
for 30 years. And then we had a Perkins loan that was at 5%. We had one Stafford loan that was 6.25. We paid those off immediately. But once we got to the 2.25% interest loans, we had to balance, what are you going to make more of? Do you focus so entirely on paying off all your debt? And, we follow a lot of your teachings there. But on the other hand, we wanted to get some of this going because we knew the interest rates are record lows compared to record highs when Dad was doing that.
So fully funded life, the ladder, when we look at the ladder, a lot of times, and we tell a lot of people, I think this is instructional, that rung number 4 is pay off all non-house, non-business debt. Rung 7 is paying off your house and business debt. And when people go to advanced level degrees, they're a lot of times more costly. A lot of times I finance it with student loan debt, but it boosts their income potential dramatically. And they function as a business. And so we would classify student loan debt for medical school as business debt. So rung number 7. So I would not throw it in the same classification as paying off credit card debt. It's just not the same because that debt is tied to making far more income. Okay. And so you mentioned this one person, John W. Shum, who's taught piano apparently and real estate, and we'll have a link to that. Were there any other individuals or podcasts or books or speakers or authors that you felt like, hey, helped you get off the dime that inspired you?
Well, I think I talked to you and introduced you to Bigger Pockets, biggerpockets.com.
And anybody who's listening to me at Financial Learning Experiences has heard me just rave about Bigger Pockets.
Those guys were instrumental in creating regular YouTube content that was focused on new investors. So that was a big piece. They have a very great forum-based thing where you can find an answer to almost any question. So I would say Bigger Pockets, that book. I read a couple other books. Everybody that reads Robert Kiyosaki there, what is he?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Rich Cash Flow Quadrant.
The Rich Dad, Poor Dad, gets you interest. It's not even a real estate book, but he talks about the rich dad that was in real estate. So
yeah, and then do you ever give any of this to David Chilton, the wealthy barber who taught compound interest?
No, you've talked about that book, and you have a great experience with that book when you were a kid. I've never read it.
I would encourage you to read it. I would encourage your kids who are teenagers now to read it. Okay. So once you decided, I'm going to do this, how long did it take you to do your first deal?
Well, it took me 2 years. Because
faster than for me.
I
sat and watched him do all this. I was like, I'll let him go first.
I graduated residency in 2010, middle of the year, and in March of 2012, we bought our first single-family home as a rental.
Okay, so tell us about that first deal. That it was a single-family home.
So it was on the MLS, the multi-list service. So it was publicly, announced deal. It wasn't any off-the-market deal or some secret thing or something.
It was
that
2010, so the market is terrible.
2012.
Or 2012.
The market had recovered some.
Yeah.
I was an incredible negotiator. They asked, we'll just throw the numbers out. They wanted $99,900 for the property. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, full basement, unfinished.
In America.
Had a fenced-in
Because I think a
backyard.
lot of people hear this right now, $99,900, and say that's not possible. But
It's
it was
Erie,
possible.
Pennsylvania, which had not seen any appreciation in the past 50 years. This is in Northwest Pennsylvania. And it was right next to a medical school. Not my medical school, but Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine was there. And that we offered $95,000. And
So 5% discount,
We got in
basically.
on the very first day, and we had just offered on a house up the street. It had not gone well. It was on Harvard Road, so I thought that was a smart-sounding road. And they called back and said, we have multiple offers. We need your best and final. And I said, I'll give you the full price. That was my negotiating technique.
Oh, they didn't say how you like them apples?
No.
That's a movie reference. So that was your first deal. So how did you finance it?
So we had already financed our own home. And so we just kind of went to the same. She was a mortgage broker who deals with multiple lenders. And they can sometimes get a better rate. They do take a little cut because of that. But often, because they do all of the handling of the loan, it can be cheaper price-wise. And that person just kind of took it over and ended up with a local bank that is interested in real estate. And they carried it through. But the key things, is that they're going to require you can do different things, and this is not a how to buy real estate session, but you can buy money for low or no money down. Or you can buy properties that way, but the property that I purchased, I wanted to go in with built-in equity, and I thought the property is probably worth $110,000, $115,000 when I bought it, and I paid 20% down.
So you put 20% down. A lot of commercial. It wasn't a commercial loan though. It was a conforming mortgage.
It was a conventional mortgage, but it's not as your primary residence.
Right. And so that means there's probably 50 basis points, 0.5% interest more probably on the loan, or 4%?
Half to 1.5, depending. Okay. It's about how good you negotiate. 25% down, 15% down, depends on how good you negotiate. If you've ever ran real estate before, obviously the more you do it, the more people get to feel that you know what you're doing. And
so that was 10 years ago that you did that deal.
10 years ago last month.
And so when you bought it, did you put it on a 15-year note, a 20-year note?
At the time, it was my very first property. I put it on a 30-year note, figuring that I could accelerate payments, but I wanted to get as much cash flow as possible. I thought I knew what I could get in rents, but you don't know until you actually have the property, put it on the market.
So has it worked out? I mean, it's been 10 years. Is that one worked out?
It's worked out great. It's a beautiful property. I think the recent Erie has finally had a little appreciation. There is no, we talk about cash flow markets and appreciation markets. Where you live down here, this is appreciation and probably a little bit of cash flow, but your market is appreciating significantly with all the pressures and everybody moving to the southeast. Everybody's evacuating like it's a nuclear bomb has gone off from where we are, but we've still seen accelerated prices, and I think the most recent estimated on an appraisal was about a 150 price, which we paid 100, so that's about a 50% increase in value, and we've done a little, renegotiating of finances and so forth because we packaged some properties together. So I'm not exactly sure how much we owe exactly on that property now because it's part of a big group. But I'll tell you that the property has paid about $12,000 about $1,000 a month every single month for 10 years. And to be honest with you, running a piece of real estate, if you're considering real estate, obviously it's a crazy time right now. You don't want to get yourself overextended. We made sure we had some money left in the bank to cover all the tenants, toilets, termites, and things that happen. And some of those will happen. But in that book, that we'll figure out the name of the author for sure, he said, that you want to make sure that you don't get yourself in a bind and you don't want to be killing yourself trying to fix things that you don't know what you're doing. And while YouTube has been very helpful, if it's a plumbing issue, the very first time I went in there, these people were very tolerant. You ever had the shower diverter, that thing you turn on the water, then you lift the thing up, and now the shower works? Yeah. That diverter, they tolerated that when they lifted it sprayed everywhere from there like a shotgun blaster for 2 weeks before contacting me. And then I tried to fix it with 3 plumbing trips back and forth to the hardware. And 3 hours into it, and reading scripture, I found out that I need to be doing what the book says and call a plumber and pay them.
That's from the first book of Hesitations, I think.
And it was dirt cheap compared to what I was doing.
So that kind of leads me to the next question is, what lessons did you learn in that first deal that are still helping you today? So let's lead with the first one is, pay up for some expert help. As I recall, like you had 3 confounding, horrible trips to the hardware store. It still wasn't fixed, and you created another leak while you're doing it. And you called, and I think the guy was there on the spot and fixed it for like $70.
Yeah, it was like $85, and they threw in fixing a dripping spigot outside.
You think about it. That isn't even the cost of one counseling appointment. And when you're sitting there yelling, hollering, screaming, trying to fix plumbing issues, we all need counseling after that.
Yeah.
So what are some other lessons that you learned from that house that made you say, hey, I can do this. This is what I would switch around. I'm really thinking about the person listening to the podcast who they're intrigued with real estate. They've listened to a lot of people talk about real estate. Maybe they've heard me talk about it, but they're still wondering, like for them, what are the things that as you got into it, you're like, hey, that's something that I only learned because I actually took the plunge and did it.
Well, I think tenant screening, you learn that early on. You get 1,000 people who tell you a good line, and if you're 2 minutes or 5 minutes deep into a conversation and you've gotten 2 sob stories and so forth, you know that there's something happening, with that person. And while we want to help people, we also are not a charity. This needs to work, and we want to help people that are helping themselves too. And so the people that I found very quickly how to screen tenants, and usually you can just tell if a person introduces himself, says why they're moving, all in the initial thing, talks about where they work and so forth. That was a very good educational thing. Calling for expert help. If it's something simple, I will handle it. And something simple means the lock handles, something. Those doorknob are easy to switch. But if it's plumbing, I'm calling the plumber. If it's electrical, I'm calling the electrician. And, if it's heavy, reconstruction, I'm calling that.
And I think the thing that you mentioned that I think is really helpful is Google it and YouTube it. It is amazing, the stuff that seems complex that actually is not, if you just Google it or YouTube it.
If you're a little bit handy, you can definitely fix a lot of things on your own. I also found that, as long as you keep a little bit of reserve back and just kind of use that money that's coming in as cash flow to kind of keep a nest egg to cover emergent events, just like you always talking about having an emergency fund for your regular life, have an emergency fund. Don't touch that money. Let it grow, and that will save you, protect you, takes away all stress. We have never had to dip into our own money ever to fix any rental problem ever in 10 years.
That's awesome.
It has paid for itself.
So after you bought that house, how long was it until you bought another single family? Is that right?
Yep.
How long?
4 years later.
4 years later. And I think that's a really important lesson. Buying one, I think I've heard Bigger Pockets say this a lot, that says after you've done your first deal, you'll never wonder again how to do a deal. Mm-hmm. You even if you don't earn a lot of money in that deal, the lessons you learn is like part of a college degree or a certification that you would pay money for. And yet you may make money off that. And then it took 4 years and you bought another single family.
Yep. The same agent that found the first one, she contacted me. She didn't overwhelm me, but every now and then would send me a message saying, hey, this fits what you've talked about. And it was very similar. It was great. And that one worked out great. And the third one we found on Facebook Marketplace.
How long was that after?
That was a year later.
A year later. So 2012, 2016, 2017. And then you made the decision to kind of leap into multi-unit. Mm-hmm. And so what made you say, I want to look at stuff with more than one door to rent, more than one apartment?
Well, you know how you use people with YouTube, different people to hype you up, some people to keep you grounded. This podcast, this YouTube channel I use to keep me grounded. But I use a hype guy, Grant Cardone, who's hilarious and inappropriate, but just hammers. You got to have units.
10X.
You got to have units.
10X, baby.
10X. And get you motivated. And, you need people to motivate you and take bits and pieces from everybody. So I had followed that guy and that same agent. Listen, there's reasons why, certain real estate agents outperform others. It's because they don't bombard you with 32 non-relevant properties. She came to me with a property that was perfect for what I wanted, a 4-unit. Well, that's 4Xing it. And Grant Cardone's all about 10X. And that 4-unit opened the door to a couple larger units. And of course, if I could have gone faster, I could have gotten more. But we added a 14-unit and a 12-unit behind that, all within the next couple of years.
So I'm doing some math here, and I think my math's right. So it's 14-unit, 12-unit, that's 26, plus 4, that's 30, plus 3 single families. So you have 33 tenants that you're managing right now.
33 units under management.
And you still have hair on your head. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it, but it's silvering out a little. But I don't have 33 units.
I got a little gray, but it's not as much gray as this guy right here.
So what would you say to that person who's listening today? They really are interested, but they're exceedingly nervous. What is one step they could take right now? What's a relevant step they could take today?
Well, I'm going to back up from that just for a second. If you're hearing this podcast, watching this YouTube, you're going to say, he's a doctor. Of course, he's going to have money. He's going to buy real estate, and it's easy for him, and it's impossible for me. That's very easy to consider that. But I have many physician friends who don't have 2 pennies to rub together because they have outsized their life. They're trying to keep up with every single person next door, every kid's in private this, private that, exclusive this, exclusive that. They've spent every nickel that came in, plus the next 2 years coming down the road. So it is very easy, no matter what financial position you're in, to say, well, it must be easy for you. It wasn't easy to accrue all those dollars, but we stayed focused. I didn't buy a 4-wheeler. I didn't own a tractor. I didn't own anything. All I did was pay off my debt and get a hold of dollars to put into account to save for the day that I could buy the real estate. And your first deal may not be a $100,000 deal. It may be a $60,000 deal, maybe a $40,000, but you can do it. The first step you can do is make the decision that you want to do it, and figure out the fears and what are they really fears? Or are they just objections that you're putting in front of yourself so that you can say you can't do it?
And I would say you could go in as a partner on a deal.
Absolutely.
And that's how I got into real estate. I ended up going with a partner.
Yeah. And when you partner with somebody, you want to partner with somebody that knows what they're doing and has a demonstrated track record, or somebody that well that that's not going to flake out on you. So I think the first step you can do is make the decision that you think real estate is going to be good for you. It has been nothing but fantastic for me. The amount of tax benefits that you get with it, the income. The tenants, even during COVID, have been absolutely fantastic. We've worked great with them. They've worked great with us, and it has been a huge, huge blessing in our life.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. Now, as we wrap this up, they had some questions that I had to ask.
Okay.
No, don't look at them.
Okay.
My ask is, were you really born first?
I don't know. I've often considered, was I you, and I should be living down here in South Carolina, and you get to go to Erie.
I'm not going to Erie, Pennsylvania, which has, what's your average snowfall year?
120 inches a year.
Get fired up.
And it's coming again Sunday.
There we go, in the month of April.
And I got to go back.
Okay, here's the next question. Who plays the piano better, you or me?
You do. But I play softer, and it's not as bing-bongy, pounding.
Bing-bongy. That's awesome. It's a wonderful
Mine's
description.
smoother,
That's
more
what
melodious.
you're going for on your piano
But
playing.
you play a little more
bing-bongy.
rag than I do. I play a little bit of more little resolutions.
A little more Southern gospelish. Okay, so do we have twin issues? They wanted to know. Is sibling rivalry amplified when you're a twin?
I don't think so. When we were in high school, we all had to be in the same dumb classes because if you
There
were
was
going
only
to
one
college,
class.
it was surrounded on three sides by a cornfield, as he said, the other side by a confinement hog operation.
Ooh, and when they
If the
opened
wind-
those windows and the wind was right.
So if you were in those classes, no. I mean, but I think there is a little good-natured, I want to do well. My twin brother's doing well. I want to do better. There's rivalry, but I don't think I don't think it's intensified.
Who gets the biggest deer?
Who has gotten the biggest
Yeah.
deer?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's easy.
Who?
Well, have you?
It's not me.
Are we talking points, inches, or what? I think I win in every category.
Well, if you take all
But if you-
6 I get a year and added up their points, it doesn't add up.
If you deal with 120 inches of snow and move to Northwest PA, you'll probably get a couple of those big deer.
There you
but
go.
you've got to live there.
Yeah, that's great. And who's gotten the biggest turkey? That would be me. 11.5-inch beard and not big spurs.
Are we talking about weight-wise?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. That is another way to measure turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the
I
weight
had
of my
3
turkey.
turkeys for Thanksgiving that didn't happen.
Yeah, those were farm raised. That's cheating. Okay, and so as we wrap this up, I want to say thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of the podcast. Our verse today is related to real estate. It's from Acts 4:34 through 35. Says, "There were no needy persons among them, for from time to time those who owned land or houses," that's real estate, "they sold them, brought the money from the sales, and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone who had need." So yet again, more inspiration for real estate. It allowed these people to be able to be a blessing to others. And so, hey, we want you to be able to do that. What is the one thing you can do this week to be able to take your next step towards becoming a real estate investment mogul? Get fired up. So, hey, our next episode is going to be awesome. It's going to have an introduction to our Fully Funded Life coordinator. Now, many of you have joined Fully Funded Life. Others have considered it at fullyfunded.life. And it's got courses, it's got challenges, it's got coaching and community events. Well, we needed a leader of it. And so we hired Chelsea Davis Hearn. And she's based out of Cheyenne, Wyoming, is doing an incredible job. We wanted to make sure everyone had a chance to meet her. And she is committed to our members' success. And man, does she have the personality for that. And she has the personal story. And she's going to share why she's so fired up about leading the Fully Funded Life membership community. And hey, if you like today's episode, please help us get this podcast to other people who could benefit. You can do it by quickly rating the podcast, leaving a review. These rating and reviews will help us in making our podcast better for our listeners. And if you go to YouTube, please go to YouTube, watch it, and leave a comment on who would make the better podcast host for Monday Money Tip. Joe or John?
Again, just like
Joe,
the piano,
John.
quieter and
Joe,
smoother,
John.
more bing-bongy. Give that like, ring that bell.
Yeah.
Come on.
And if you and also comment on whether or not you'd like to hear me and John provide a piano solo. Have a great week, everybody. Get fired up.
Put a thumbs down for that.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit iwbnin.com. We'll catch you next time.